The farmhouse at Hollow's End had been abandoned for 2 decades. Its roof sagged, its timbers leaned inward as if straining under a weight too heavy to bear. The forest had crept closer in those years, pines pressing tight against its walls, branches clawing through shattered windows. On a late autumn night, 4 teenagers crept across the clearing, flashlights jittering across tall grass. They had heard the stories. Everyone had. A place where screams carried, where mirrors never showed your true face, where Evelyn Grant once unearthed something that should have stayed buried. "Dare you?" one of the boys whispered, pushing the youngest girl toward the door. 10 minutes inside. That's all. The girl swallowed, lifted her chin, and pressed into the sagging house. The others waited, snickering nervously, their beams of light playing across warped boards and broken shutters. Inside, the air was damp and sour, heavy with mold. The girl's shoes crunched over glass, her light grazing walls where wallpaper peeled in long, curling strips. In the corner of an upstairs bedroom, a mirror leaned against the wall, its surface cracked, its silver backing peeling. She froze. Her flashlight beam wavered across the glass. Her reflection stared back, then smiled, lips curling upward though hers remained still. The reflection lifted its hand and pressed against the other side of the glass. She gasped. The light fell. When the others finally dared to enter, the mirror stood silent. Shards littered the floor, faintly wet as if with condensation. The girl was gone. The farmhouse had claimed another. Rachel Grant never wanted to return to Hollow's End. She had built a life far away from the pine forests, far from the whispers that clung to her family name. But when her father died, the old house in Pennsylvania yielded boxes of papers, yellowed journals, and brittle photographs. At the bottom of one crate, tied with fading twine, were Evelyn Grant's journals. Rachel set them aside at first. Evelyn had been an eccentric. Her family still whispered of the dig that ruined her career. But her son, Michael, was drawn to the journals immediately. He was 8 years old, endlessly curious, and already prone to strange dreams. It started small. Sketches in his notebook of trees that bled into mist. Faces without eyes. Hands pressing against unseen walls. One night, Rachel found him standing in the hallway, staring at the bathroom mirror. "She's behind it," he whispered. Rachel's blood chilled. "Who's behind what, honey?" "The man," Michael said simply, as if it were obvious. "He says his family too." Rachel smashed the mirror the next morning. But when she swept the shards into the trash, she swore some of the fragments still reflected faint movement, shadows that belonged to no one. The more she tried to protect him, the worse it became. Michael began refusing to sleep in his room. He said the man came through mirrors and windows, whispering in a voice he couldn't block out. One evening, Rachel caught him sitting cross-legged in front of the cracked screen of an old television set in the attic. The static pulsed faintly, and Michael's lips moved in time with a second voice that was not his own. "Michael!" Rachel snapped, yanking the cord free. The screen died with a hiss. He looked up at her, eyes wide, his face pale. "He said you can't stop it. He said you opened it first." Rachel froze. Opened what? But Michael only stared. That night, Rachel finally opened Evelyn's journals. The pages spoke of the farmhouse, of the reliquary unearthed, of whispers that never stopped. Evelyn had written of her nephew, Thomas, the boy who saw the eyeless man. His warnings filled the margins, repeated over and over in a child's handwriting. "He wants to come through. He says his family too." Rachel closed the book with trembling hands. The dreams began soon after. Rachel dreamed of walking the fields of Hollow's End, fog curling around her legs. She saw the farmhouse, rotting but somehow alive, its windows glowing faintly with sickly light. Always, in her dream, the front door hung open, waiting. When she woke, her hands were streaked with dirt, as if she had clawed through the earth in her sleep. Unable to resist, Rachel returned to Hollow's End with Michael. The farmhouse stood just as it had in her dream, groaning in the autumn wind. Locals had abandoned the surrounding land, Fields lay untended, barns collapsing into weeds. Inside, the air was colder than the season allowed. Dust shifted as if disturbed by unseen breath. Michael clutched her hand tight, but his eyes darted toward the staircase. "They kept it upstairs," he whispered. Rachel followed his gaze. At the end of a narrow hall, behind a warped door, they found it. The mirror of ashes leaned against the wall, wrapped in filthy cloth. Its surface was dark, smoky, like glass scorched by fire. When Rachel pulled the fabric back, the mirror did not reflect the room. Instead, it showed a forest, a place of skeletal trees and drifting mist. Pale figures moved between the trunks, their outlines human but distorted. Some turned their faces toward the glass, eyeless sockets glowing faintly. Rachel staggered back. Michael only stared, transfixed. That night, a stranger appeared at their motel. He wore a long coat and a wide-brimmed hat that shadowed his face. He carried himself like someone used to being unseen. "You should leave," he said quietly. His voice was calm, but his eyes, when Rachel caught them, were fevered. "That house doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the Veil." Rachel narrowed her gaze. "Who are you?" He slipped a folded paper onto the table. On it was a symbol, one Rachel recognized from Evelyn's journals. A rune etched into the bones of the reliquary. "The Order of the Hollow Veil," he said. "We've kept watch for centuries. What you've touched is not meant for you." Rachel bristled. "Then why does it keep finding us?" His lips thinned, but he said nothing. When Rachel looked back, he was gone, leaving only the folded paper. The rune shimmered faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. It happened 3 nights later. Rachel woke to silence. Michael's bed was empty. The window was open, curtains billowing though the night was still. She found him in the farmhouse. He stood before the mirror of ashes, his small hands pressed against the glass. The surface rippled faintly, like water disturbed. "Michael!" she cried. He turned, his face slack, his eyes glazed. "He says his family too, Mama. He says I belong." Before Rachel could reach him, the mirror's surface pulled inward. Michael's body vanished into the glass with a muffled gasp, leaving behind only faint handprints burned into the surface. Rachel's scream echoed through the farmhouse. The mirror showed only the dark forest now, and Michael, standing among the pale figures, his mouth moving in whispers she could not hear. Rachel tore through Evelyn's journals in desperation. She found the entries about Thomas, the boy who saw the eyeless man. Evelyn had written of his trembling warnings, of how he described a man who claimed kinship, who wanted the family's bloodline. The words blurred as Rachel read, "It is not random. It is inheritance. The veil feeds through us." Rachel's breath caught. The curse was not only about the farmhouse. It was about the Grants themselves. When she looked up from the journal, she caught sight of herself in the motel mirror. But the reflection was wrong. Her reflection's lips curled upward in a smile. And behind it, faintly, Michael's hand pressed against the glass. Desperate, Rachel returned to the farmhouse with allies, a weary priest, a local historian who had studied the town's folklore, and, reluctantly, the Order's stranger. They circled the mirror of ashes, chanting from Evelyn's notes, tracing runes in chalk. The priest raised his crucifix, his voice breaking as he prayed. For a moment, the mirror flickered. Its surface fractured, cracks spiderwebbing outward. Rachel glimpsed not one reflection but dozens, alternate versions of herself staring back. Some were bruised and broken. Others smiled with inhuman hunger. One Rachel reached through the glass, her hand pale and trembling. "Join us," it whispered. The historian screamed as his reflection burst through the shard and pulled him inside. The priest collapsed, his eyes wide and glassy. The mirror did not seal. It multiplied. Every shard reflected a different possibility, a different horror. The veil was not closing. It was thinning further. Rachel stumbled into the farmhouse cellar, clutching Evelyn's journal. The air shimmered faintly, glowing runes bleeding through the walls. The reliquary Evelyn had once sealed appeared faintly, half visible in the dark. It pulsed with cold light. And there, Within the mirror of ashes stood Michael. His eyes were dark, endless, reflecting nothing. He raised his hand, pressing it against the glass. "Mom," he whispered. "It's okay. We belong here." Rachel pressed her palms to the mirror. "No, you belong with me." But the shadows behind him crowded closer, eyeless, their mouths open in silent hunger. The order's stranger grabbed her arm, dragging her back. The farmhouse groaned. Its beams twisted, its walls buckled inward as if collapsing into itself. The mirror pulsed once, then fractured in a blinding flash. When Rachel opened her eyes, she lay outside in the grass. The farmhouse was gone. Only a hollow pit remained, smoking faintly in the dawn light. Michael was gone with it. Months later, construction crews arrived to clear the land. They found nothing but foundation stones and rotting timbers. Yet workers whispered of seeing faces in reflective glass, pale, watchful, pressing from the other side. Rachel returned home, carrying only a broken frame wrapped in cloth. The mirror of ashes had not been destroyed. Its largest shard now lay hidden in her attic, covered but never silent. At night, when the house was quiet, she heard Michael's voice from the shards. "Mom, I'm still here." And sometimes, when she dared to look, she saw his hand pressed against the glass, waiting.
Upcoming. Rifts in the Ethereal.